Today I'm going to go over a little bit about why your store is at risk, and most importantly, really how to protect it. That's the most important part of this. Obviously, sales of your store depend on your store being up and running properly. If your store is down, you're not making any sales. The web is a very competitive environment. People and customers are one click away from hitting one of your competitors. You need to make sure that your store is up and running as much as possible. Most people who are running an online store don't quite understand what they're responsible for and what the platform that they're using is responsible for. And so let me give you sort of an overview of what that means. Many of you are running your online store using something like Shopify or BigCommerce, and that e-commerce platform is responsible for the things that you see below: the payments gateway, the interface, the dashboard, the APIs that are used, as well as the databases, the servers, and disaster recovery backups, generally making sure that your store is available to your customers. You, as the merchant, are responsible for your store data and your security. So you're responsible for your data, like your orders, your customers, your inventory, your products, your content, your themes, and your assets. You're also responsible for your store security. So making sure that you and your users have strong passwords, have enabled things like two-factor authentication, that you've set proper roles and responsibilities on them. And unbeknownst to most of you, I'm sure, you're also responsible for backup and recovery of the data that is in your store. On the right-hand side, you'll see a typical terms of service that you'd find with an online service provider that states that you are responsible for all the activity and the content of your store. Meaning, if something happens to the content of your store, the e-commerce platform that you're using is not responsible for recovering that data. You are responsible for recovering that data. This surprises nearly every merchant that we talk to. The e-commerce platform that you're using absolutely has a backup. They have a backup that covers a few disaster scenarios that we'll talk about in just a second. You are responsible for the data and the security of that data for just your store. So let's dive into that just a little bit more. The platform does have a backup, whether you're using Shopify or BigCommerce, they have a backup, and that backup is generally going to be used to cover unlikely events like a fire in the data center, a meteorite landing on the server, a data breach happening. The backups can cover all of that. The platform's backups are useful for that. Your responsibility starts when it's not the entire platform that is affected by the data breach or by the problem. Rather, it's just your store that's affected by the problem. So how does your store get affected but other stores don't? Well, a third-party application that you've installed might have an error in it and cause a problem in your store. An employee or a partner might go in and delete data, either accidentally or potentially maliciously. Might have a problem importing a CSV file, which causes problems just to your store, not to the entire platform. Or the very likely scenario that you're working late, or one of your employees is working late, and they accidentally make a mistake, and it affects just your store. Any of those very likely scenarios are the responsibility of you and not your platform provider. So if you call your platform provider because a third-party app has caused a problem in your store, or you've had one of your employees make a mistake, the backup that they have is not going to be useful for you. The backup that they have is sort of an all or nothing proposition. If the whole platform has a problem, absolutely they can recover the data for you. If your account has a problem, that backup is not of use to you, and you'll be responsible for restoring the data on your own. This really surprises a lot of people, and we'll hear from Kyle a little bit later, who's going to give us a story about one of the problems that he encountered in his store. Let's talk about those errors in a little bit more detail. So what can go wrong? What can go wrong on your store that might not affect someone else's store? So we talked about third-party applications. These third-party applications are generally a fantastic addition to these online platforms. They add functionality that's not available by default. They allow you to do certain things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And they extend the platform to add features and functionality that otherwise wouldn't be there. When you install that application, you're typically giving it read and write access to some part of your store. Most people don't realize that that write access also allows that application to delete things and to edit code or edit items in your store. So if you install an app, for instance, that has access to your product catalog, it can edit and delete any of the products that are in your product catalog. And sometimes, as we've seen at Rewind, these applications go a little bit haywire. They cause a problem, they get released with a bug, they cause a problem in your online store and doesn't affect anyone else's. Unfortunately, like we mentioned, when that happens, it's up to you to fix it. It's not something that's affected the entire platform. Employees can sometimes cause problems as well, or when you're working with certain partners. We've seen cases where a business relationship has gone bad, person still has access to the store, and they go in and maliciously go in to delete items or to just cause some problems into the online store. Not a great situation to be in. Like all of us, everyone's working late these days, working at home, away from the office. Human errors happen probably more than ever. We've seen this. You've got a bunch of employees who may not know how to use different aspects of the site, and they can also cause problems. CSV file imports, it's one of the most common things that we see at Rewind and one of the leading causes of problems for online stores. CSV imports are a really tricky way to update your store. What I mean by that is it's not always clear what's going to happen when you make a change in that CSV file. So we've had some customers, for example, who have thought that by deleting a column in the CSV file, when it gets imported, it'll just ignore it because it doesn't exist. But they didn't realize that when they deleted that column, it actually deleted that meta field in the online store instead, and it wiped it out from their entire store. Certain characters can cause problems with CSV imports. Occasionally, you'll see quotes and different quotation marks causing problems with these CSV imports. And all it takes is one special character and one problem to cause a massive issue throughout your entire store. So CSV imports is definitely something that we see on a regular basis for customers that can cause a large number of problems in your store in a very, very short period of time. And then the last one, obviously, is hackers and malware. Generally speaking, what we're seeing these days in this area is phishing attacks, where people are trying to get passwords into your online store. They're sending emails to your employees asking them to log in so that they can steal their passwords and they can log into the stores and see, and cause problems that way. That's really the extent that we're seeing online security breaches these days. It's through phishing attacks and social engineering. So the question really becomes, how do you get away from that? How do you make sure that your store is safe? And these are 6 things that we've come up with that help you protect your store. So the first one is password management. If you're not using a password manager, you absolutely should be. At Rewind, we use something called 1Password. There's also companies out there like LastPass. Really, anything where your browser is not managing the password is going to be absolutely required. If you can remember the password to your online store, it's not secure enough. You really need to be using a password manager in order to properly protect your store. So go and sign up for one of these password managers. Create unique passwords for every site that you're logging into, and that'll really help secure your online store. A lot of the times people don't realize that when a password is reused across multiple sites, if one of those sites is breached, hackers will almost immediately take that username and password combination and start using it on other sites as well. So for example, if you're using the same password for your online store as you were using for, let's say, online banking, and your online banking system has a breach and that password becomes compromised, hackers will take that username and password and start using it across all of the internet as much as they can to try and get into those accounts. And they'll quickly realize that they can get access to your online store. So use one password for each site, and using Password Manager, either 1Password or LastPass or even the browser, to manage your passwords and make sure that you're using unique passwords on every site that you go to. The second item that we've got there is called Embrace Multi-Factor Authentication. This is sometimes called two-factor authentication. You can enable it on most websites these days, including your online store. And essentially what two-factor authentication is, or MFA, is they will send you a 6-digit code typically to your cell phone when you log in, so that if somebody does get access to your password somehow, they still need this two-factor code, this second code, if you will, to log into your online store. And that is an extremely secure way of making sure that even if your password is compromised, your account is not going to be compromised. Two-factor authentication can be enabled on most sites. I'd recommend, if it's available on any website that you go to, or any web application that you're using, that you enable two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. It's really going to help increase the security of your online accounts. The third is something that we call adopting the principle of least privilege, which basically means only give access to the certain parts of your store that people need for the work that they're doing. So if you have a contractor, for example, who's coming in to work on your theme, you shouldn't be giving that contractor access to your product catalog or your customers or your orders. Just give them access to the theme. Same thing with your employees. As you add users to your online accounts, make sure that you're giving them just access to what they need to in order to do their job and no more. That really helps in case something happens to them and their account gets hacked. That really reduces what's called the blast radius of that violation. So it's the principle of least privilege. Only give people access to the things that they need. Don't give them access to anything that they don't need. Fourth item on our list here is properly vetting apps. As we talked about earlier, third-party apps are a great way of extending the functionality of your online store. They're a fantastic feature of any online platform. They allow you to do things that the platforms don't do themselves. They're generally really very high quality, and they really extend the functionality to allow you to customize that platform and let it do what it is that you need it to do. Unfortunately, as you've probably seen in most of the app stores, there's a wide variety of quality in these applications. Some are built by large teams of people, and some are built by just single developers. And what you need to make sure of when you're installing these applications is that you trust them. So do things like look at the copyright on their website. Has it been updated? What happens when you phone the company? Can you talk to a human being when you phone them? How quickly do they answer their phone call? Do they have a 1-800 number, or is it just someone's cell phone number? Try emailing support and see what the time to respond is and whether you get a response in the first place. Look at the reviews of the application and see, are there other merchants that are using that application? What's the average ranking in the online store? How many people have rated it 5 stars? How many people have rated it 1 star? Read the reviews and get a sense of what it is that company does and how it treats its customers. It's really important before you install these applications to be very sure that you trust the application. When you install the application, you're giving it read and write access to your online store, whether that be to your product catalog, your orders, or your customers. And it's the same thing as if you were exporting that data and sending it to them and giving the ability to update your store in real time. That's what you're doing when you install these third-party applications. So make sure you trust them. Do a little bit of work, vet the app before you install it, and make sure that you trust it before giving it access to your data and to your online store. Fifth, as we mentioned on the previous slide, watch out for phishing attacks. We're seeing these a little bit more these days, where social engineering hackers are trying to get access to your online accounts, sending you or your employees emails asking for them to log in or reset their Shopify password. And when they click on those links, they're actually not being sent to the platform's application page, but instead to a third-party page that's recording their password. Need to be really careful about these attacks because they sometimes look very legitimate and they can cause massive problems to your online store. Now, one of the things is if you're using a password manager like LastPass or OnePass, those sites will automatically look at the URL of the website and only insert passwords that are useful for that URL. So that really does help you also with these phishing attacks, because if you end up being taken to a third-party website that looks like your platform, but isn't your platform, when you go to insert your password, you're going to open OnePassword or LastPass, and it won't have any passwords for that website because the domain won't match. So using a password manager can also actually help you reduce the likelihood of getting phished and losing your password that way. And if you do all of those 5 things, you're really reducing the risk to your online store. You're doing the best job you can. At the end of the day, mistakes happen and you need to have a backup. As we mentioned before, you're responsible for the backups of your online store. The platform that you're using has a backup, but it's really an all or nothing proposition. If the entire system goes down, they can recover it. If your account has a problem, that backup is of no use for you. So you're responsible for backing up your store, whether you do that with an application or you try and do that in some other way, but you absolutely need to make sure that you've got a backup just in case one of the first things ends up failing. You might properly vet an app and you did the best that you could. You looked at all of it, you trusted the application, and yet something still happened. You tried to limit the amount of data that your employees had access to, but they still got attacked. Their password was compromised and somebody still got access and deleted your product catalog. Or you went in one day and accidentally uploaded a CSV file with an error in it that wiped out your entire product catalog. These are all examples that we've seen at Rewind of things happening to online stores. So at the end of the day, even if you do all the 5 things above, you absolutely need to make sure that you have a backup just as a last resort to protect your store. Rewind's one of those backup solutions. So just a little bit about us. Rewind's an application for a bunch of different SaaS platforms. We back up Shopify, BigCommerce, GitHub, Trello, and QuickBooks Online with plans to expand to all sorts of different SaaS applications. On the platforms that we support, we have over 1,300 5-star reviews. Customers talk about our customer service, and the application is great. It works extremely well. Been trusted by over 100,000 organizations to protect their data. It's a Shopify Plus certified app. It's the #1 reviewed BigCommerce app. And in 2020, we were the BigCommerce Merchants Choice Award winner as the best application in their app store. So a solution like Rewind will help and back up and restore your solution, your store for either Shopify or BigCommerce. It'll back up your product catalog, your customers, your orders, your themes, the way that the store is configured. All of that gets saved into what we call the online Rewind Vault. And with just a couple of clicks, you're able to restore as little as just a single product image to the entire product catalog with just a few clicks. There's other benefits of having a backup that a lot of people don't realize as well. So in some cases, there are industry regulations and audit requests that make it so you need to have a backup. And so you can look into this, whether your insurance provider requires you to have a backup, whether your cyber insurance requires you to have a backup, or if there's some sort of compliance that you need to make in terms of ISO standards or potentially SOC 2. But some industries have regulations that require a backup. That lost cloud data is obviously not going to not only lead to business disruption, but again, if you do need to comply, it can end up with costly fines if you're not actually complying with that backup. You can easily manage your inventory and your product archives with a single bird's eye view of all of your data. So you've got one spot that you can go in, you can see all the things that have changed. In terms of Rewind, it'll look like almost like a change log of the history of what's happened to your store, which is really easy to see and get a quick overview of what's changed in the store in the last little while. Obviously, by going with something like Rewind or another product, you really allow your team to focus on your core product and your core offering without having to worry about data security. And in some cases, we do see having backups as a differentiator. You take the commitment of protecting your customers' data seriously, and that can actually be a way that you differentiate your business. So a ton of examples of what can go right and why you should also have a backup. In addition to the disaster recovery, there's lots of other things that you can do with the backup tool to free your employees and make sure that they know that, hey, even if something goes wrong, we've got your back. With that, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. I'm just trying to get out of the slide deck here. Oh, can't hear you, Allison.
Apologize for that, everybody. We're just gonna give everybody a couple minutes to take that all in and see what kind of questions we have from the audience.
I've got one here. What's the most common breach that you see most e-commerce brands struggle with? I think, Rewind, we've seen almost everything. It's been, we started Rewind about 6 years ago now. And so we've got a wide variety of things that we've seen. I remember one customer, for example, who was editing their online store and had their cat jump on their keyboard, edited the theme file, accidentally saved it and broke their entire store. I think the most common problem that we see is really CSV file imports, though. Those have the ability to cause a large amount of problems in a very short period of time. And so CSV files tends to be the one that we see the most commonly, as well as the one that causes the most problems in the shortest period of time. Say second to that would be third-party applications and the errors that are sometimes popping up in these third-party apps. Popular third-party apps that are well established, that have received significant funding and have significant developers with them, often don't cause really many problems, but there are a lot of smaller apps that don't have the same level of quality control on them that you might see from some of the larger providers. And so those third-party apps would be the second thing that we see.
Great. We've got a few more. One of the questions is, have you had any experiences with data loss yourself, Mike?
Yeah, actually, I mean, personally speaking, I absolutely have. I think that's one of the reasons why we started this company in the first place, which is a long time ago, I was working at Adobe. I was doing a presentation in front of a few hundred people and went to advance my slides and my computer froze. And sort of apologized and said, okay, I'll reboot my computer. And as I went to reboot my computer, it restarted. The screen behind me went blank that I was presenting on top of or onto. And in front of me, I saw a hard drive with a big question mark over it on my Mac. And so completely lost my hard drive that day in front of a few hundred people, including my boss who had come to watch me for the first time. And yeah, I think, if you've been using hard drives long enough, you understand that at some point they're all going to fail. And so I'm a big backup believer. I'm very particular about making sure that all of my machines are backed up. We're storing stuff locally as a backup. I'm storing things in the cloud as a backup. But absolutely, I've experienced the pain of data loss before, and I can tell you that once you experience it, it's something that you never want to go through again.
Great. We've got a couple more questions here. The next one is, why do some companies lack urgency in creating backups?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people just assume that it's not going to happen to them, right? We talk to a lot of customers who were aware of the problem and then come to us after something's happened, just saying, I knew it was an issue. I just never thought it would happen to us. We talk to a lot of customers on some of our other business lines where they're looking to protect the data, not because it's anything that they're going to do, but because of the people that they work with. It's something where people generally think that they understand it, that something can't happen to them. It's never going to happen to me. And then when it does, they're really kind of shocked at that. So I think it's just a confidence that people have that it's not going to happen to them until it does.
Great. The next question is, if my data gets lost then backed up by Rewind, do you provide actionable insights to show how I can prevent this from happening again?
It's a good question. We do not have access to a lot of the information that would allow us to do that. We're talking about getting that information with some of our platform providers. So understanding whether it was a person that made the mistake or whether it was an app that made a mistake, understanding if it was a person, who the person was, and maybe what actions they took and where they were. That would be really valuable information that's currently not made available to us, that we would absolutely love to have. And we've requested that from a couple of the platform providers so that we can create almost like an audit log history of what's changed in your store, and not only what's changed, but by who or by what, giving you a little bit more insights into it. So unfortunately, not at the moment, but something that we're actively working on with our partners.
Wonderful. Next question. Do you or your team prep for the human side of data loss, frustration, confusion, feelings of crisis?
Yeah, we've invested in customer support right from the start, because we know that that our customers will be calling us really only when they have a problem. And when they have a problem, they're typically panicking. They're under a tremendous amount of stress to get their online store back up and running as quickly as possible. So right from the start of Rewind 6 years ago, we've had customer support available, and we've made sure that we respond back to our customers in as little time as possible. That customer support now has been extended to 7 days a week, so we cover off the weekends as well. And I believe our average time to respond to a customer is something like less than a minute for most of the inquiries that are coming in. And then in turn, that team is really experts in handling all sorts of different situations, because they've been dealing with this for years and years. They understand that when data is lost and when things go down, that people are panicking. They want it quickly. They want it fixed as quickly as possible. And so they're there to help them. I think the great thing about Rewind is that the service is designed with the entrepreneur in mind, with the business owner in mind, or even the e-commerce manager, so that people can restore the data on their own without having to contact support. So most of our customers don't ever need to talk to somebody in support. They're able to go into Rewind, they can understand and see what's changed. They can restore their store back to the way it was before the problem happened. And they don't ever have to interact with somebody from our support team. They can do that all on their own. And that really reduces the amount of time it takes from the time the disaster happens until the time that they're able to get their store back up and running.
Great. Next question. How do you stay ahead of all of the different ways to protect your data as technology shifts?
Certainly challenging. We have a large team now. We're over 110 people located all over the world, with people in Europe as well. And we continue to grow and try and protect as many platforms as possible. So we started on Shopify in 2016. We've since expanded out to cover 4 or 5 additional platforms, with more coming in the next few months, as well as into early next year. Rewind's vision is really to protect all of the online accounts that you have and in the software that you use every day. As part of doing that, we've dealt with major transitions on the platforms that we support. So whether that is sort of smaller level API changes that we see on some platforms, or major level API changes that we've seen on others, we've really, I think, we've seen a lot in the 6 years that we've been there, and have built processes and tools in place to make sure that we understand if there's an API change, how we can edit the data or translate the data from one platform into, or one version of the API into the next version. Really, with the core benefit being that when the data is restored, it's restored properly into their online store, regardless of what's happened behind the scenes and regardless of whether the platform has advanced from one API version to the next.
Great. Well, that was the last question that we have. So I think we're safe to move on to the next portion of our session here with Hawk Media.
Awesome. So let's bring out Kyle from Sounds True, and we'll chat with Kyle about what he's seen and what he's doing over at Sounds True.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Kyle, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Great to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
So I thought we could start with maybe just telling us a bit about Sounds True and what the company does, what it sells, and maybe you can talk about what platform it's using to sell its merchandise.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Sounds True is a multimedia company. We're in the transformational space. So a lot of our products focus on spirituality, mindfulness, meditation, conscious business, those types of things. So Sounds True has been around for 36 years. Originally our founder, Tammy Simon, was just going around and recording lectures on a tape recorder in Boulder, Colorado of different teachers. And so, we've always had our roots in multimedia and audio, as well as, traditional book publishing. We're now on Shopify Plus. We had migrated over from Magento. And, like, as you were talking, the trauma of the way that I found Rewind was just coming back to me. So many of those items that you list, we were one of those companies that, I thought that we had backups in place, and until I realized we didn't.
Yeah, we'll definitely want to touch on that. So talk to me about your current role then at Sounds True, and just give everybody sort of a brief intro into you and your role at Sounds True.
Yeah, so I'm the e-commerce director at Sounds True. So I'm the end user and primary stakeholder for SoundsTrue.com, and that's where we sell direct to consumer for our online courses, our in-person events, as well as all of our audiobooks and ebooks. My day-to-day, I oversee all of the marketing channels, so all of our email, organic, social, paid media, all of that. And then my team is also responsible for maintaining the back end of the Shopify store. So creating new products, creating collections, all of the typical day-to-day things that you'd expect of a Shopify store.
Can you talk about how many people are on that team then? How many people would be managing the store?
Yeah, so it's a fairly small team. Sounds True is about 150 folks all in on both the B2B and B2C side of the business. So we have about 5 people that are regularly engaging in that back end work, in addition to some other third-party development teams we work with, and we have about 5,000 SKUs in our catalog. So when it comes to tagging and updating the meta fields and making sure that all of the touch points are in sync, it's quite a big task. We have our own proprietary digital library system for delivering our digital content. And so a lot of our work is also, making sure that the transaction from buying a product on the store to consuming it in their digital library is a smooth and connected process.
How long have you been on Shopify Plus? When did you make the transition from Magento?
So we're just about 2 years in with Shopify Plus, and it's really been a game changer for us. We've seen increased conversion rate. We had been on Magento for a really long time. And I joke that we had kind of made like a Jenga block of all of the different apps, and the store had gotten to the point where it's really kind of just Frankenstein together and held together with duct tape. And so when we made the transition over to Shopify, I realized that one of the major challenges that we had in marketing wasn't even platform specific; it was the product catalog. And so, we had about 8,000 SKUs active on Magento, having been around for 36 years. and being in the content creation business, you know, SKUs are just constantly created. We're very fortunate in that problem in this day and age where we actually have too much content. And so, you know, we had spent, I probably had a dedicated team of about 5 or 6 people that spent the better part of a year really working with our data, revamping the entire product catalog, recreating and distilling down to, you know, 13 primary parent categories for every single SKU. And that really became a huge focal point for transitioning from Magento to Shopify, was really investing in the product catalog itself, making sure that that was optimized for dynamic product ads through Google and Facebook. And yeah, it just, you know, really was an illuminating process to realize just what a vital component of the store that is.
I bet that sounds like a massive amount of work to transition from one platform. Was there something, was it the Magento either change or end of life of Magento 2 that prompted you to look for Shopify, or was it something else that prompted you to say, you know what, let's take a look at whether Magento is the right platform for us to be on?
Yeah, so it was definitely, you know, spinning down of Magento 1 that you know, triggered the initial search of, okay, let's start looking. You know, and I think also just looking for operational ease and scalability. You know, at the time we had like a 13-person in-house dev team, and just, you know, the operational carrying cost of maintaining that environment was no longer sustainable. And so we wanted to really think about, okay, how do we build something that is much more agile, you know, integrates you know, more fluidly with the marketing platforms and some of the other apps that we hadn't been able to use. And so, you know, after some analysis, the Shopify Plus environment was really the clear choice for us.
Did you start on Plus, or did you migrate from regular non?
We went all in on Plus, just right from the get-go. Yep.
Cool. And so you get onto Shopify Plus, and talk to me about what your first impressions were of data backups on Plus. I mean, obviously with Magento, likely you were responsible for that yourself, or whether it was your hosting provider that was doing them. Did you investigate backups when you first transitioned? Was that something that you looked into, or was there an assumption that, oh, like we're moving into the cloud and they've got it?
Yeah, you know, I think we had made some inaccurate assumptions. The biggest change for us was actually how the catalog was maintained and updated. In the Magento environment, it was all done in platform. And when we moved over to Shopify, it became CSV uploads. And so, you know, we use a very powerful app. It was called Excelify, and they've rebranded to Matrixify. And it's an incredible tool, but it will do exactly what you tell it to do. And so, you know, a lot of the work that we were doing, you know, we could roll back a theme, and you know, we were also under the impression that we were safeguarding our data. So, for instance, whenever we would do a CSV upload, we would limit the columns. Hey, we're not going to touch, you know, all these other meta fields. We're only looking to do, you know, X, Y, or Z. Let's limit the potential here and just modify what we're working with. And for a long time that was okay. You know, I think we got lulled into the illusion of safety, because we would do CSV uploads 6, 7, 8 times a week. Had it down, almost became a rote process, no problem.
How did you make sure that the team was working on the most recent version of that file? Like, would you export it first and then somebody would edit it? Like, what was the workflow like there?
Yeah, so part of the safeguards, and certainly not you know, an efficient process, is before we would do any kind of upload, we would export the entirety of the catalog so we could take a snapshot in time. And that was our process, right? Okay, if something goes wrong, right before we do the upload, we have a snapshot of what it looked like before we made the changes.
Totally makes sense. Okay, so you've got this team, you're making, like you said, 5 to 10 changes on a weekly basis. And then you want to talk a bit about what was the issue that ended up causing a massive problem to your store?
Yeah. So we were trying to do something that seemed fairly straightforward. There were a few digital formats that we no longer were going to offer for digital downloads. And so all we wanted to do was remove 3 types of formats from the catalog. For whatever reason, the commands that we were using in the upload, they kept getting overwritten. And so we would make the change. I would see in the catalog, okay, great, like those formats have been removed. And then the next day I'd come back and they were still there. So, I started looking at some of the documentation. I was like, oh, there's this other command. This looks promising. Let's try that. And so, we did our data export, and I limited sort of the blast radius. And I was like, okay, I've got the SKU and I have the product type. That's all I'm going to modify. The command I used deleted everything that wasn't a denoted field in the upload. So in this case, the backup method that we've been using completely backfired in that in about 30 seconds, I deleted all but SKU and format of about 2,000 products. Fortunately, I get this Slack message from my colleague, and they're saying, hey, something's weird with the store. I'm starting to see images, product descriptions, everything's just disappearing. And so I was able to stop the upload. So I didn't even finish it. It would have been a full catalog change. And that, 30 seconds, it took about 3 weeks for us to rebuild all of those product cards. The images, I couldn't just do, the simple upload of the safety net, because I'd actually deleted the images from the CDN, right. Which then made us realize, oh, we still have those in an AWS cloud over on Magento. The product copy description also completely destroyed, and we were having to go into our other systems to pull it back in. As you were saying, the formatting of the copy itself was just a nightmare, right? We had any HTML denoting that this was bold or in italics, or a hyperlink. Just the nuances of trying to get, the team was scrambling to fix it as quickly as possible, but it's hard to get, full page product copy of 2,000 SKUs absolutely perfect. So, we could kind of bulk fix what we could, but yeah, I mean, that was not my finest 1 minute of life. And I was really grateful though, in some ways. One, it wasn't the full catalog. We were able to repair it. But I remember, going to my CEO after and saying, my team will not make any additional uploads until we have a safety net. There's no Control Z on Shopify. I reached out to them. There's nothing we can do. Yeah, and so yeah, I was kind of reliving that moment when you're talking, and and so I knew we needed a solution, and I wasn't sure where to start. So my team, we go to Google, we start looking, we reach out to our Shopify rep, and actually Rewind was the name that just kept coming up in all the conversations. It was our Shopify rep said, hey, there's other solutions potentially, but just go with Rewind. And when I do my own research, I like to look at lists, and the name that keeps appearing on all the lists is probably a good one, and that absolutely was Rewind was the top choice in all of them. And so we installed it. We finally have that safety net again. I know I sleep a lot better at night. I still don't think I've done a catalog upload since. I've quarantined myself from that work, and have people smarter than I am that do that now. So, but it's also nice to know that they're not going to have that moment where right. The world comes crashing down, and they're like, oh my God, what have I done? I was just trying to do this one little thing, and I broke the store.
Yeah, it's a real panic, isn't it? I remember when we were working early days on Rewind. So this is, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when we first quit our jobs and went full time to work on Rewind. So we were a team of 4 people, and Amazon had one of its major outages at the time. And I logged into Amazon, into AWS, and like none of our data was there.
Mm.
And I was like, what did I just do? Like, it wasn't me, it was an Amazon outage, but you're just full of panic in that time. So I can only imagine what you're going through as, you get that phone call that's like, hey, I think I've got a problem on the store here. Like our descriptions are going, and you're going, that's kind of weird because I'm running this little command at the same time. And I know exactly the feeling that you had there because I've experienced it. And it's one of those ones where if you've ever had that, you do whatever it takes to not have that feeling again for the rest of your life.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. I want to double click a bit on the product images thing that you mentioned. You kind of glossed over it, but that was one of the first things that we learned actually, was that I don't think a lot of people realize this, because I bet there are people out there who are taking export CSV files and thinking that that's a backup of their store. But I thought we could just clarify that if you have the CSV file, the images that are referenced in that CSV file are like URLs. They're URLs of Shopify's content delivery network, of the image files themselves. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that when that product is deleted, those images on the content delivery network are also deleted. So when you import that CSV file back in the next time, it's going to look for that URL. It won't find it because it doesn't exist. And so when you import the data, it sounded like you got the data, but the images were not there anymore. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's correct. At one point, some of our products, especially older products in the catalog, I was terrified that I might actually have to go and download images from Amazon product cards one by one just to get an image. And so yeah, so it in the end it was a really illuminating experience. And at that point we now have safeguards for those images. We've figured out what backing those up. And I remember the first time that the team came together, right? Like we're all a little gun shy of making any site-wide changes to the catalog at that point. And so we ran a rewind backup before we did it. And we pushed a new theme live and did a catalog change. And we actually did. We had to roll back. And just the ease of that process and that peace of mind was like, okay, we're going to be all right.
Yeah. Well, I'm very thankful that that you've got Rewind now. We've got you protected in case something happens next time. But really appreciate you sharing that story, and hopefully other people can relate. I think it's like I said, it's quite surprising to a lot of people that this is the reality of moving to the cloud, is that there is a backup, but it's not for your store, it's for the whole thing. And it just takes one disaster like what you experienced in order to try and figure that out. So thanks for sharing your story, Kyle. Really appreciate it. It's great.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
All right. I think we're on to trivia time. Just before the top of the hour. So we've got 12 questions, I believe. And we'll go through them. You should see on the right-hand side the trivia question and the answers, or the answer options, if you will. And so we'll go through them. They are on the topic of cybersecurity today, and we'll go through them. So with that, let's go through the first question. The first recorded worm accidentally created what type of cyber attack? See, I can't see what you're seeing, so I don't know if the questions are showing up now.
The questions are showing up, Mike.
There you go. So on the right-hand side, you should see the question. The first recorded worm accidentally created what type of cyber attack? Your options are a distributed denial of service, malware, phishing attack, or SQL injection. Give everybody a few seconds to answer that. And the answer is first recorded worm accidentally created a distributed denial of service attack. Answer was A. Give yourself a point if you got that correct. And we do have prizes at the end of this, so we're keeping track of your scores here. Question number 2. In what war was the first cyber attack used by the United States? In what war was the first cyber attack used? World War II, the Cold War, the Gulf War, or the Korean War? What war was the first cyber attack used by the United States? And the answer is B, the Cold War. A Siberian gas pipeline was exploded by the CIA using a Trojan horse program that was named Logic Bomb. The first cyber attack used by the United States. They exploded a Siberian gas pipeline. So the Cold War is your answer there. Question number 3, true or false? True or false? The first recorded cyber attack occurred in 1903 during the first live demonstration of wireless telegraphy. Or I think I got that right. True or false? The first recorded cyber attack occurred in 1903 during the first live demonstration of wireless telegraphy. True or false? 50-50 chance. And if you guessed false, you are correct. First ever cyber attack actually occurred in 1834, nearly 200 years ago, when thieves stole financial information from the French telegraph system. Imagine, 1834, that's crazy. Question number 4, what British mathematician relied on Polish scientists' previous algorithms during World War II for their famous code-breaking machine? Answers are Julia Robinson, Alan Turing, Johann Lambert, or John von Neumann. What British mathematician relied on Polish scientists' previous algorithms during World War II for their famous code-breaking machine? Code-breaking machines in a bunch of popular movies. I feel like I saw one just a couple of years ago about this. A, B, C, or D? Give you a few more seconds. And then we'll close that one out. The answer is B, Alan Turing, Turing machine. Turing's partner, by the way, was named Gordon Welchman. So they were the one that broke the code in World War II. Question number 5, the first computer to ever be password protected was also the first computer to have its password credentials hacked. Where was this computer located? First computer to ever be password protected was also the first computer to have its password credentials hacked. Where was it located? The US military base, at IBM, at Harvard, or at MIT? First computer ever to be password protected was also the first computer to have its password credentials attacked. Where was it located? A, B, C, or D? Give you a few more seconds. And we'll lock that one out. The answer is D, at MIT. Alan Scherr stole the first passwords for the CTSS machine, as it was known, in order to get more time than his allotted share. His classmates also used compromised passwords to leave taunting messages for their professor. There you go. A long time ago. When did the first, question 6, when did the first cybercrime conviction take place in the United States? When did the first cybercrime conviction take place in the United States? 1971, 1975, 1981, or 1985? First cybercrime conviction. A, B, C, or D? The answer, lock that question out. The answer is C, 1981. Punishment was 1,000 hours of community service and 2.5 years of probation for that cybercrime. Question number 7. In 2000, one of the largest DDoS attacks occurred targeting popular e-commerce sites like eBay and Amazon, causing over $1.2 billion in damage. Who was the perpetrator? 2000, one of the largest DDoS attacks occurred targeting popular e-commerce sites like eBay and Amazon, causing over $1.2 billion in damage. Who was the perpetrator? Was it a group of Russian hackers, a 15-year-old teenager from Quebec, 2 20-year-olds in Estonia, or a coalition of ethical hackers based in Eastern Europe? Russian hackers, Quebec hackers, Estonia hackers, or Eastern European hackers? I'll give you a few more seconds. A, B, C, or D. And we'll lock that one out. The answer was B, a 15-year-old boy from Quebec, whose name was Michael Calcé, maybe. Online, he referred to himself as Mafia Boy. Might remember that one. Question number 8. Phone phreaks use various devices to imitate the frequency required to unlock early telephone networks. What devices did they use? What devices did they use to create the correct frequency? Phone phreaks used various devices to imitate the frequencies required to unlock early telephone networks. What devices did they use to create the correct frequencies? A whistle from a box of Captain Crunch, a tuning device set to 2600 hertz, perfect pitch, or all of the above? A, B, C, or D? And we'll lock that one out. The answer is D, all of the above. The first, one of the most prolific phreakers was a 7-year-old blind boy who began imitating the tones on his telephone and then accidentally discovered that if he repeated them with his perfect pitch, he could connect to any telephone network in the world without paying the expensive long distance fees. Question number 9. Which modern day tech billionaire got their start building telephone hacking devices, pretending to be Henry Kissinger and prank calling the Pope? Which modern day tech billionaire got their start building telephone hacking devices, pretending to be Henry Kissinger and prank calling the Pope? The options are Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, or Larry Page. A, B, C, or D? A, B, C, or D, and we'll lock that one out. The answer is C, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, got his start building telephone hacking devices. Question number 10. Today, a cyber attack occurs how often? How often do you see cyber attacks? A, B, C, or D? Every 6 seconds, every 36 seconds, every 6 minutes, or every 60 minutes? Chad, you want to get in on this?
I'm gonna.
Cyber attack occurs how often? Every 6 seconds, 36 seconds, 6 minutes, or every 60 minutes?
6 seconds.
Every 6 seconds is incorrect, but it's very close. You were close. Every 36 seconds.
Wow.
Answer is B, every 36 seconds. Can you imagine? Okay. 2 more and then we're done. True or false? We're going to question 11. True or false? So flip a coin. 75% of data breaches have been linked to human error. True or false? 75% of data breaches linked to human error.
I'm gonna go with true.
Going to go true. You're going to be 0 for 2. We're going to lock that question out. False. Over 90% of data breaches are linked to the human factor. So when it comes down to it, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human. We make mistakes, and that's what leads to most data breaches. And then last question, number 12: what Hollywood actress invented a communication device that is now the basis for modern Wi-Fi and Bluetooth networks? Your answers are Marilyn Monroe, Ada Lovelace, Ava Gardner, or Hedy Lamarr. 3 of those people I've heard of.
I don't want to be 0 for 3.
No. A, B, C, or D. Marilyn Monroe, Ada Lovelace, Ava Gardner, or Hedy Lamarr. Which one was invented a communication device that is now the basis for modern Wi-Fi and Bluetooth networks?
I'm going to go random and go for D.
Nice job. 1 for 3. You got it. You got it. I thought you were going C. I thought everyone always went C on the random guesses, but you went D, which is perfect. Hedy Lamarr, you are correct. So add up your scores, and Rewind will get in touch with you for whoever wins the prizes.
Thank you so much, Mike.